Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It's been a busy last couple of weeks for Mike Elko and the Texas A&M Aggies, and we've broken down the commitments for this Aggies program as they've come in. But heading into spring practice, it's about time to tie a bow on this transfer portal class, and I want to give you guys my top 5 impact transfers for the Texas A&M Aggies heading into the 2024 season. This one took me a while to do. I had to comb through a lot of players. Tough decisions to get a top 5. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it truly has been a blast covering this team as Mike Elko has taken over this program. The amount of support, the amount of feedback you guys have shared, that stuff means the world. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. One, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, a team we're going to be talking a lot about as spring practice picks up. And then secondly, would love to hear your top 5 players. I mean, I'm going to talk about my favorite 5. If I left a name out that you think has a massive impact for this Texas A&M team, let me know in the comment section. We'll chop it up there. Really excited to get into this one. And without further ado, I want to go to my number 1 impact transfer. And this is, I think that one of the top players that was available in the transfer portal, and that's Nick Skirton coming over from Purdue. And as a Michigan fan, having watched a lot of Big Ten football, Nick Skirton, truly one of the best defensive linemen, I think, in the entire country. And I'm extremely excited to see how they use Nick Skirton on that defensive line. We took a deep dive into this Texas A&M defensive line. I think it's going to be a strength of this unit. And make no mistake about it, like Mike Elko is a line of scrimmage coach. He wants to win on both sides. And a guy like Nick Skirton joining a already very talented defensive line for Texas A&M really excites me. And you go back and watch some of the film on Nick Skirton. One, as a Michigan fan, Michigan has a good offensive line. Nick Skirton absolutely gave it to those Michigan offensive tackles. This is a guy that, kind of a Mack truck. One, he's very good in the run game, very athletic in space when you ask him to kind of hold the edge, go make plays in space for someone who's 280 pounds. But when you ask him to pin his ears back and get after the passer, the power he has in his hands, the ability for him to collapse pockets. You know, you talk about leading the Big Ten in sacks, which Nick Skirton did in 2023. That's only scratching the surface of the impact that Nick Skirton has on that defensive line. You talk about manipulating pockets, breaking up pockets, hurrying quarterbacks. That's really where Nick Skirton, I think, does his best work. This is a guy that had a 21% pass rush win rate, 28 quarterback hurries. You talk about Nick Skirton joining the already extremely talented Texas A&M defensive line. This is where Mike Elko wants to win. And I think Nick Skirton immediately is one of the top edge rushers in the 2024 season in the SEC. Nick Skirton, my top impact transfer for the Texas A&M Aggies. Going into number 2, and another guy that I'm a massive fan of and really was one of the biggest wins for Mike Elko in the transfer portal, and that is former 5-star cornerback Dez Ricks, a guy that you haven't seen play a ton at the college football level. Couple things that make Dez Ricks, for me, one of these impact transfers. One, he's coming in and immediately bolstering up and competing for one of those cornerback spots. Mike Elko brought in a ton of names, guys like Donovan Sanders, BJ Mays, Will Lee. You have Chappell coming back earlier this morning. You look at that cornerback room, and I think Mike Elko looked at it heading into 2024 and said, hey, we need some competition. And that's exactly what they bring in and do. Dez Ricks, one, certainly could be a starting cornerback for Texas A&M in 2024. He's definitely going to play, but you talk about building this program the right way, and this is essentially a high school commit coming into this. He was supposed to be in the 2024 class. He reclassified into 2023, got his essential redshirt year with Nick Saban in Alabama, now comes to Texas A&M as a guy that not only can start and contribute to this team in 2024, but a guy that is going to be there in 2025, probably going to be there in 2026, a piece that Mike Elko can build around in that back end of that Texas A&M defense. He checks, really all the boxes that you want in a cornerback. 6'1", 185 pounds, fluid mover. He can get his hands on footballs. This was the number 1 cornerback in that 2024 class before he reclassified. Mike Elko got a very talented cornerback with tremendous upside in Dez Ricks. And you look at that cornerback room, what was, in my opinion, a massive problem for Texas A&M in 2023. I think there's an argument that that's one of the strengths of this defense heading into that 2024 year. Next guy I want to go to, and again, going back to the line of scrimmage on that defense, a guy like Cassius Howell, who I am extremely excited about, got a chance to go back and watch a little Bowling Green film, some team that I don't normally watch during the 2023 season. Wanted to get a feel of Cassius Howell. First thing that excites me, a little bit of a different pass rusher than what Texas A&M has, especially with a guy like Nick Skirt and some of those guys coming back, right? You have a bunch of Mack trucks who are going to be extremely disruptive. They can take tackles right into the laps of quarterbacks. Cassius Howell, in my mind, is a little bit of a different flavor, right? You're talking about Nick Skirton, bigger body, heavy hands, going to, again, kind of impose his will on offensive tackles. Cassius Howell, as opposed to him, is kind of a Ferrari coming off the edge. Very, very much juice. This was a guy that was recruited as an athlete, potentially was going to play wide receiver at the next level. He slots in at that edge rusher position, and you watch the film. I mean, his first step, his ability to burst off the line of scrimmage, it's going to give tackles at the SEC level a lot of problem. I don't know if he's going to be a starter for Texas A&M, but he's certainly a guy where you win on first and second down, you force a team into third and long, maybe you kick a guy in the Nick Skirton inside, you bring Cassius Howell in kind of this speed package to get after the passer. He's going to be a pass rush specialist, I think, in 2024 for Texas A&M. 23% pass rush win rate, over 10 sacks at Bowling Green, and a guy that's young. I think still developing. You talk about Mike Elko building the foundation of this program. Probably another guy that we're going to be highlighting in 2025 as well. Cassius Howell, maybe not a day one starter for Texas A&M, but having that elite pass rusher on defense, I think is absolutely massive. I think Cassius Howell, quite frankly, could be that. Next position I want to go to, and that's the wide receiver room. And this one, kind of a two reasons why I went with Jabari Barber. One, you go back and look at that Texas A&M offense last year, and you're kind of looking for that next slot wide receiver, right? With Smith going to the NFL, I think a lot of people assume Moose Muhammad is going to be the guy, and Moose Muhammad probably is going to be the guy. But the reason I want to highlight Jabari Barber as somebody that can come in and impact this team right away is you have such a talented cornerback in Connor Wigman. I don't know if there's a person in this country that is more high on Connor Wigman than me after going back and watching some of that early 2023 film. You got to give him the weapons. And a guy like Jabari Barber, you talk about how he fits Coach Colin Klein's offense. I think he's the Phillip Brooks of that Kansas State offense in 2023, where we're going to try to get the football to Jabari Barber and let him go make plays after the catch. You look at Jabari Barber's numbers, had over 980 receiving yards at Troy in 2023. Over 450 of those came after the catch. This is a guy that, I mean, Coach Colin Klein and his offense, and we're going to do a deep dive on that later this weekend, is predicated on getting the ball to playmakers in space. And I think a guy like Jabari Barber is exactly the kind of wide receiver that you want. And when you go back 12 months ago, there was another undersized receiver that transferred from Troy. He ended up going to Oregon. His name's Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson had a phenomenal year for the Oregon Ducks. Was one of the more impactful wide receivers that you saw in 2023. You could see a similar story with Jabari Barber coming to Texas A&M. In the last position I want to go to, and then I'm going to kind of give you guys some of my thoughts on where Texas A&M might go in the transfer portal after spring practice. I'm going to go to Cyrus Allen. Staying at that wide receiver position, a little bit of a different flavor, again, than Jabari Barber. Jabari Barber, a guy that going to win short and intermediate routes, create separation, work after the play. A guy like Cyrus Allen, we had the question when we went over that Texas A&M wide receiver, who is going to be the guy that wins vertically down the field, gives Texas A&M that deeper third presence at that wide receiver position. You know Connor Wigman has a very good arm. He can push the ball down to that deeper third. Now you need a wide receiver that can go attack it. Cyrus Allen, I mean, he's averaged over 18 yards per reception during his first 2 years at Louisiana Tech. He's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but when you turn on the film for Cyrus Allen, the ball tracking ability, the ability to have body control and go up and make those contested catches, had over a 70% contested catch rate at La Tech in 2023. That's kind of the guy that you want for Texas A&M in this offense. So now you look at attacking all portions of the field. You have a quarterback that certainly can do it. Now you want the wide receivers. I mean, you have guys like Noah Thomas that we're extremely excited about. Another guy that's proven it at the college football level is Cyrus Allen. You talk about the balance between Jabari Barber and Cyrus Allen. I think you certainly have that with these two wide receivers coming in. Now, One note that I want to make about this Texas A&M class is I look at the offensive line. And that was when we did our deep dive on Texas A&M going into spring practice, going back and looking at some of the film. That was a massive problem. And I think it gets better with the coaching and Coach Cushing coming into Texas A&M. You still need the guys, right? And we look at that Texas A&M offensive line, and you're optimistic about the talent that they have. Now that talent getting developed with Mike Elko and Coach Cushing coming in. The one thing I think you might look for is this Texas A&M staff getting into spring practice. They're going to have elite defensive linemen to go up against every single day in spring practice. You're probably evaluating what you have on that offensive line. You brought in some guys that I think are projectable, and you're going to see if they can hang at the SEC level. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Elko and this staff get into spring practice, look at this offensive line, and they're going to make decisions. One, all right, I like what we have. We have some nice competition. I think we're going to get a good starting five out there. There could also be a reality where you bring some of these guys in who are making that jump from the group of five to the power five and say, I don't know if we have enough. And so when spring practice wraps up, that transfer portal opens up again. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas A&M goes out and grabs another offensive lineman or two to come in and compete in fall camp, because that's really where you're looking at this roster and saying, that's the question mark you have. I don't have question marks about the wide receiver room. I certainly don't have question marks about the quarterback room or the running back room. On offense, my question mark is on the offensive line. And if you see Texas A&M not go to the transfer portal after spring practice, you probably feel pretty good. But you also might see Mike Elko go into the portal and grab another body or two to compete on that offensive line. That's really the one position I'm looking at and still saying I have some question marks about. We'll see if those question marks kind of manifest into going out and grabbing some guys in the transfer portal. Those are my top 5 impact transfers. Left a lot of good guys that I was excited about. Will Lee, Donovan Sanders at the cornerback spot off this list. Would love to hear some names that you guys think I'm sleeping on. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.